What is procrastination? Well, simply put, it's the delay or avoidance of work, and it creates problems, both big and small. You can procrastinate on little things like skipping chores at home, or the big things like paying rent on time. And we often procrastinate without even knowing that, in fact, many aspects of our lives suffer, including our jobs, relationships, and even health. Welcome to ALUX. And here at ALUX, we understand that our habits can make or break our lives, so we've made a list of 15 of them that usually cause us to slip up and procrastinate so we can all avoid the trap and get shit done. Let's go. Number 1. Impulsivity. Have you noticed that when you have an important task to do, you tend to have the urge to do other minor and not as important tasks first? The period you ought to be finishing your assignment or project is when you have the urge to tidy up your room, wash the dishes, and clean the yard. Well, over time, the most important tasks that would require a lot of time and effort, they get pushed to the back of your mind until you're right before deadline. This is completely normal, but it's also one of the underlying reasons why people end up procrastinating until the very last minute. Number 2. Talking about your plans. You enjoy explaining things even before they're done. This habit tends to make you procrastinate by using up all your time talking about things that you should be doing at the time. In the process of talking, you start to overanalyze problems in your plan, and before you know it, a project that should have taken 3 to 4 hours ends up taking a whole day because you spent most of the day thinking and talking about it instead of doing it. Humans, by nature, tend to seek out consolation. We reach out to family and friends for a solid 30-minute chat focusing only on how hard our lives are, how crappy our job is, how it never seems to get any better. But realistically, this is yet another form of procrastination that tends to leave you feeling rather demotivated. Skip the complaining, keep the plans to yourself, and get to work. Number 3. Over-planning. Look, we're all guilty of this one at some point or another. Sometimes when you have a task to do, you find yourself making up scenarios in your head of how things should go, how you should finish the job, and what should happen if you encounter a problem. You forget that all the time spent on this wishful thinking and planning could be better used actually starting the job. We can bet that you mostly do all of this planning laying on your couch and surfing the internet. You see what we mean? To put it simply, over-planning ends up wasting far more time than you can afford to waste. Number 4. You can't do without caffeine. Do you find that you work late hours and wake up in the morning needing that sweet-smelling coffee? Well, you just might be procrastinating. If you spend your days putting everything off until the last minute and then you try to power through your work at night, well, that right there might be why you're reaching for those energy drinks. Now, maybe you're saying, but I work better at night. But do you? Do you really? Because there's a lot of science out there that says it's likely not true and you're only kidding yourself. The worst part of this habit is that most people tend to not rest during the day when they intend to work at night. Instead, they fill their days with other activities and start working when they're already tapped out. Number 5. You can't do without your smartphone and tracker apps. How many hours do you spend on your phone daily? Health trackers, applications for deliveries and purchases, all the world's music services and social networks, and of course, games. Even when you commit yourself to a task at hand, the constant notifications on your devices are like irresistible bait for procrastinators. A quick peek just to see what you missed, and before you know it, you'll have sunk 30 to 60 minutes scrolling Insta and watching YouTube videos. So do yourself a favor. Anytime you have to complete some dedicated work, put that phone on silent and place it face down, or better yet, in a different room. Number 6. Indecision. Indecision almost always leads to procrastination. It occurs when someone must make a significant, frequently stressful decision, but feels overwhelmed by the available options. And as a result, they do nothing and rather spend a lot of time juggling all the possibilities before committing to something. Being able to make decisions is crucial, yet challenges and issues might prevent us from doing so. We may put off making judgments when we have a strong desire to be correct or to avoid being wrong. Perfectionism and indecision often dance together. Number 7, you're rarely motivated. A common reason people keep putting things off is simply they lack the motivation to do it. For example, a student who doesn't care about getting good grades likely feels totally fine not preparing for an exam. It's difficult to overcome this because humans aren't wired to be motivated unless they perceive some kind of immediate reward. But the reality of life is, we don't only get to spend our time doing things we want, things that excite us or offer us immediate rewards. So self-discipline is key to getting your tasks done on time, even when you don't feel like it. Number 8, perfectionism. The desire to do everything flawlessly also fuels procrastination. A perfectionist is afraid of criticism and disappointment in case of failure. They demand the highest standards of themselves and won't settle for anything less. Because they place so much pressure on themselves to reach perfection, these folks often delay starting because they're worried they won't be able to execute it the way they want. And instead of trying to get things done with whatever capabilities they have, they pursue ideals that aren't even achievable because, well, perfection isn't a real thing. Instead of this, remind yourself that good enough is better than perfectly unfinished. Number 9, avoidance and self-doubt. Self-doubt is a sneaky cause of unnecessary suffering, and this suffering is amplified when it happens alongside worry and procrastination. Some people procrastinate because they're afraid of making mistakes, which might stem from past experiences where they lacked independence or grew up with helicopter parents always calling the shots. Avoidance is a common strategy for procrastinators motivated by fear, but all this does is make things even more overwhelming. As more tasks are put off, the list grows longer and longer, deadlines get missed, and it leaves a person doubting themselves even more. It sadly becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're not careful. Number 10, disorganization. Being disorganized makes it difficult to not only start and finish jobs, but also to concentrate when you finally start working on something. According to research, disorganization is connected to other personality characteristics such as impulsiveness and decisional and behavioral procrastination. Sometimes we fail to get things done not because of procrastination, but because of how disorganized we leave things. When you're disorganized, your tools will be mismatched or completely absent, and you'll be unable to work. A few unfounded ideas contribute to disorganization by serving as reinforcements. One such assumption is that jobs are all composed of unbreakable big pieces. They're not. Break them down into bite-sized chunks and you'll soon begin to see just how manageable it all is. Number 11, you don't prioritize. Many individuals make the mistake of setting big objectives for themselves without taking into account all the little steps needed to reach them. They put off taking action because they believe it won't be as satisfying as achieving their huge objectives. It triggers the cycle of procrastination. First, tasks accumulate, and then we can't cope with the volume and are forced to postpone them. But to prevent this, you need to learn to plan and prioritize your tasks. Number 12, you enjoy urgency. Now, this is more like the illusion of productivity when working in an emergency. Some procrastinators get satisfaction from the fact that even with increased urgency, they were able to cope with the task. The feeling is extremely pleasing, successfully starting and finishing your project right before D-Day. They pride themselves on getting the job done and associate last-minute work with improved performance. But it's not sustainable and often leaves many of their colleagues in a tough spot while they wait. Number 13. You don't write things down. Many people avoid taking notes down and would rather memorize all the things they have to do, which isn't exactly a bad thing, but when you have so many things to do, you might not even sense just how much time it'll take to do everything. Our minds can sometimes make things seem easier than they actually will be. Not taking notes also puts you at risk of forgetting some of your tasks and having to rush them last minute. The best way to take notes is by simplifying a project and breaking it down into several smaller steps or action items. Instead, make a habit of writing down all the things that have to be done with supporting information to make the work easier. Number 14. Low self-esteem. According to a study, procrastinators tend to display greater stress and anxiety levels, which often diminish their self-esteem. Contrary to those who don't procrastinate, those who do often have self-depreciating attitudes about both themselves and others. Low self-esteem makes people overly critical of themselves and their abilities. They find value in other people's approval and refrain from starting things because they worry about backlash. Number 15. Not having a well-defined rest schedule. One of the bad habits that causes procrastination is not resting when you should. Poor sleep is linked to higher levels of procrastination the following day. Lack of sleep prevents the body and mind from adequately recuperating, and over a long time, it has detrimental impacts on our health. Cognition, memory, and decision-making are all hampered by a lack of sleep, and it increases the likelihood of daytime drowsiness, which could reduce productivity and academic performance, as well as reduce the ability to control your emotions. Alright, Aluxer, we're at the end of the video today. Tell us in the comments section what habit you think is the most important to correct. Now, for getting this far, of course, there's a little bonus waiting for you. Procrastination, it's hard to spot, especially for someone who might be guilty. Some people equate procrastinating with being lazy, but the reality is far more nuanced than that. Instead of putting effort into what has to be done, the procrastinator often works and continues to waste time on pointless pursuits. The best way to get rid of procrastination is by being accountable to someone. When you have to be accountable for your actions, you'll find it a lot easier to do away with certain bad habits and focus on your work better. That's all for today's video, Aluxer. Make sure to leave us a like if you enjoyed this one and subscribe so you never miss an upload.